Some cars are abandoned, some are forgotten. And then there are cars like this one, left to fade quietly as time slowly buries their stories. This is a 1972 Mercedes-Benz W108, a 210S, and it hadn't moved a single inch in over 40 years. It sat locked inside a collapsing barn on the outskirts of a tiny village, covered in bird droppings, drowned in dust, half buried in weeds. The kind of place where stories end, but today, we begin a new one. Before we get into the build, you have to understand what this car is. The W108 wasn't just any sedan. It was Mercedes-Benz's luxury flagship from the late 1960s to the early 1970s. Built during a time when craftsmanship mattered more than cost. This model, the 280 SE, came with a 2.8L inline-six, straight-line power, a velvet smooth ride, and legendary reliability. For many, this was the last true mechanical Mercedes before electronics took over. And while today it's just a classic, back then, this was what success looked like. We heard rumors about this car from a retired postal worker. He said a friend of his had an old Benz sitting in a barn since the 80s. We didn't expect much. Usually that means a stripped chassis and a mouse nest. But when we finally saw it through a crack in the barn door, we froze. A full, intact W108. The paint, dusty, but mostly original. The glass, still factory clear, and that iconic grille, still holding its ground. The car had belonged to a German diplomat who moved to the countryside after retirement. He used the car on weekends, and when he passed, it was parked in that barn and never touched again. It took us an entire day to get the W108 out. The brakes were frozen solid. The tires, flat, dry-rotted, and fused to the floor. We had to lift it from the frame and slowly drag it forward using dual winches. The moment sunlight hit the body, we saw decades of grime and weathering, but no major rust. That's when we knew this one was worth saving. Back at the shop, the teardown began. We started with fluids, or what was left of them. The oil had turned to tar. The coolant system was dry. The fuel tank, full of varnish and rust flakes. Underneath, we found rotted brake lines, a corroded exhaust system, and decades of dirt caked into every crevice. The engine was seized, the starter dead, the wiring chewed through, but nothing we hadn't seen before. A car like this doesn't need luck. It needs time, patience, and a little respect. We pulled the original 2.8L inline-six and stripped it down completely. The block was solid. No cracks. The crankshaft just needed a polish, but the pistons were toast. So we sourced OEM replacements from Germany. Every bearing, gasket, and seal was replaced. We rebuilt the carburetors, replaced the fuel lines, installed a new radiator, oil pump, alternator, and a modern ignition coil, but kept the original distributor cap for authenticity. The transmission was drained, flushed, and resealed. We converted the cooling fan to electric to improve heat management in modern traffic. And finally, a stainless steel exhaust system with a deep, classic tone. Cosmetically, the W108 still held its shape, but after 40 years in a barn, every panel needed love. We began with a full chemical strip, revealing surface rust and minor pitting. No collision damage, a miracle. We hand-sanded the entire body, repaired a few holes in the rocker panels, and welded in new metal where the floor had gone soft. Then came primer, block sanding, primer again, more sanding, and finally, the color. We chose the factory-correct W108 silver gray metallic with glacierite clear coat for that deep, wet look. The chrome was either replated or polished. Trim pieces were restored by hand. Over 40 individual parts, cleaned, straightened, and refitted. Even the original Mercedes badge was saved, a little bent, but still proud. The inside of the car was heartbreaking. Leather was dry and cracked. Mold had eaten the headliner. The wood dash trim was warped beyond recognition. We stripped everything, down to bare steel. The floor pans were treated, sealed, and insulated. The seats were rebuilt from the frame up. New padding, fresh stitching, wrapped in cognac leather, imported from Stuttgart. The door panels and center console were done to match. The original steering wheel was saved, cleaned, and clear-coated. And we didn't stop there. The gauge cluster was recalibrated. The clock, rebuilt and ticking again. And that vintage Becker Europa radio, now Bluetooth-capable, without changing the look. Wiring was one of the biggest challenges. Most of the factory harness was brittle and chewed. So we built a new one. Color matched to Mercedes' original codes. Every fuse replaced. Every ground cleaned. We installed modern relays for headlights and fan control, hidden to preserve the OEM appearance. The windows, lights, signals, all restored to original function. We installed new glass seals, realigned all 4 doors. And for the final touch, a restored toolkit, factory jack, and a rare W108 owner's manual, tucked neatly in the glove box. 3 months of work, hundreds of hours, thousands of dollars, all leading to this moment. We poured in fresh oil, topped up the coolant, checked every connection, and turned the key. Pause. The engine hesitated, coughed, and roared to life. Not loud, not aggressive, just smooth, refined, like a W108 should be. On the road, the car was quiet, controlled, floating over imperfections. The transmission shifted like butter. The brakes, responsive. The steering, effortless. This wasn't just a drive, it was a time machine. This car had waited over 40 years for someone to believe in it again. And we did. Restoring this W108 wasn't just about nuts and bolts. It was about preserving a moment in automotive history. This was a time when cars were built by hand, when every line had intention, when engineering wasn't rushed, it was perfected. Total cost? Around $14,000, not including our labor. Total time? Just under 12 weeks start to finish. Was it worth it? Every single second. If you want to see more rescues like this, subscribe. Because next up, we're bringing back something truly wild. An abandoned Jaguar XJ6 left in the snow since 2004. You don't want to miss it.